Translator, Dark Angel, Editor, Kurisu's senior brother Ma roared until his voice split with fury. His foe even cradled a child in his arms, and yet he still could not lay a finger on him. How could that not suffocate a man? As the moments dragged on, the oppression in his chest only grew heavier, and his heart turned more frantic. First, a strength talisman could only sustain for about 10+ minutes. Second, he truly had suffered grievous wounds and needed to tend them at once. Otherwise, the longer they were left to fester, the more perilous they would become. Junior brother Yang, join hands with me. Let's bring this brat down together, he shouted. Agreed. The other man stepped in as well, sword in hand, joining the fray. Two elites of the Gushing Spring tier were actually surrounding and attacking a single martial artist of the Element Gathering tier. If word of this spread, others would certainly sneer and despise them. Yet these two were plainly the shameless sort, caring not in the least for face or reputation. They wanted only one thing: to kill Ling Han as quickly as possible. But to their shock, they discovered it was something they could not possibly accomplish. Ling Han's figure was slick as a swimming fish. No matter how they lunged, they could not seize him. They could only chase in vain, wasting strength to no purpose. And the more time that passed, the worse the tide turned against them. Brat, what kind of man are you to keep dodging? If you've got the guts, stand and face us head on. Senior brother Ma tried to bait him. Are you an idiot? Ling Han snorted. You already said you can kill me in a single move, and I'm still supposed to stand there and take it? Do you take me for an idiot, or are you the real idiot here? Damn you! Senior brother Ma howled, rage boiling over. However, I don't have the leisure to wait until you're exhausted, so take a slash from me then. Ling Han's expression turned solemn. Within his heart, the sword intent of the mysterious 3000 revolved and surged. He began to ponder this style. In an instant, an oppressive dread, like the sky before a tempest, pressed down upon senior brother Ma and his last remaining companion. What kind of sword art is this? Senior brother Ma's face changed at once. In his eyes, it was as though Ling Han had become the very center of the universe, and everything else around them had dimmed into pallid insignificance. Why? Why can't I even move my body? Junior brother Yang looked ready to cry. His opponent's sword was about to strike, yet he could not even lift a finger. Didn't that mean he could only wait for death? Ling Han smiled inwardly. He had used his divine sense to freeze the two, creating the illusion that they could not move. This was an influence upon their consciousness. Ordinarily, so long as one possessed a sufficiently steadfast will, he would naturally not be affected. For example, Kan Ye. With the singular focus and concentration he devoted to saber arts, even if Ling Han were still in the heaven tier, he would still be unable to shake Kan Ye's will. However, these two, because of their heavy injuries, already had greatly weakened wills. Then, they were shaken by Ling Han's 6 flashes of sword chi and astonished by the strange, terrifying power a mere first-layer element gathering tier martial artist could wield. Their wills were naturally battered and affected. Thus, Ling Han threaded his influence into the sword stance of the 3 styles of black origin, leading them to believe they were unable to move. Mysterious 3000. Ling Han swept his sword. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Dozens of sword lights shot forth, condensing into keen blades that streaked swiftly toward senior brother Ma and his accomplice. Under the pressure of imminent death, senior brother Ma and his partner forced themselves out from beneath the oppression of Ling Han's divine sense. Yet now there was no time left to flee. They could only flourish and whirl their weapons, desperately blocking as much of the onslaught as they could. Peng, 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 peng. Every blade of origin power here was equivalent to Ling Han's full-strength strike. In other words, it was as if more than 20 Ling Hans were ganging up on each of them at once. Who could withstand such a storm of slaughter? They managed to parry and shatter a few blades of origin power, but there were even more that pierced into their bodies, tearing and rending with terrifying, destructive might. Ling Han flashed past, his sword turning in a cold arc. Pooh, pew. In an instant, 2 heads shot up into the sky, then fell back to the earth, revealing the defiant yet fearful faces of senior brother Ma and his accomplice. Ling Han panted, then said, "No wonder that fellow, the Sword Emperor, was so formidable. I've only grasped 1% of this one style, and I can already slay 2 elites of the Gushing Spring tier. He grew thoughtful, pondering. If the Heaven's Sword sect still existed and learned that I had mastered the 3 styles of black origin, they probably wouldn't spare me, right? A sect that could nurture a monster like the Sword Emperor. Would they have a Shattering Void tier warrior among them? I once believed there was no one in Shattering Void tier in this land, but thinking on it now, it may be that such ultimate powerhouses preferred solitude, hiding themselves away from the world. It would be best to use the 3 styles of black origin as little as possible, only when it is life and death, or when I can ensure this secret will not be exposed to anyone else. Meat. While he was still lost in thought, Hu Nu had already hopped out and begun prancing beside the fire-eyed bull. Ling Han had purchased a considerable amount of demonic beast meat, but the majority was level 1, with only a few level 2, much less any level 3. Thus, the little girl was practically drooling by now. "You glutton!" Ling Han teased, laughing. "Nu is glutton." Hu Nu nodded furiously, thinking it was praise. Ling Han laughed loudly and began to deal with the fire-eyed bull. The strange fire kept transmitting its thoughts to him, impatient and eager to refine and swallow those 2 eyeballs. He first lit a fire, then sliced off one of the bull's legs and set it to roast over the flames. Meanwhile, he dug out the bull's eyes and held them in his left hand. The strange fire surged forth and wrapped around the eyeballs, which immediately began to shrink at a startling pace. In only a few moments, they were reduced to ash, while the strange fire slipped back into Ling Han's left hand and transmitted a thought to him, complaining that it still had not eaten its fill. "These 2 gluttons," Ling Han thought, amused, as he soothed the strange fire, promising he would seek more food for it in the future. Before long, the bull's leg gave off a mouth-watering aroma. Ling Han drew a dagger, sliced off several slabs of beef, and placed them onto a plate. That was the convenience of a spatial ring. He could even carry such impractical things without them taking up space. Hu Nu immediately began to eat with bliss. She was a classic glutton. She had not even swallowed the first piece when her hand was already reaching for the second. She crammed her mouth as full as she could, to the point it became difficult even to chew. The entire body of a level 3 demonic beast was a treasure to the current Ling Han. The bull's tough hide could be crafted into defensive gear that even sharp weapons infused with origin power would find difficult to pierce. And the beef, bones, and tendons were all richly nourishing, food that could strengthen and invigorate the body, comparable to certain treasured items. Of course, the most precious were the eyes and the horns. But the eyes had already been eaten by the strange fire, leaving only the pair of horns. They could be forged into weapons with fearsome destructive ability. Looking closely, there were seal patterns on the horn's surface, like carved script. Precisely these seals had granted the fire-eyed bull such overwhelming destructive power. Otherwise, this pair of horns would merely be harder than an ordinary bull's horns. As Ling Han continued eating his beef, he tried to activate those seals. This was extremely difficult. After all, every person's martial arts differed, let alone when the source was an entirely different species. Yet Ling Han was no ordinary man. Soon, one seal lit up, then the second, then the third. A red glow wrapped the horns, as though they had caught fire. Ling Han gave them a light wave, and a tongue of flame blasted strongly from the bull's horn, carving a scorched line 3 inches deep into the ground. Translator, Dark Angel. Editor, Kurisu. So keen, so razor-edged. Ling Han gave a slow nod. If one spoke only of raw, ruinous might, this pair of bullhorns had already surpassed the sword he currently wielded. Of course, if he could employ a fitting spirit tool, then the destructive power at his command would certainly not fall below that pair of bullhorns. Burp! Hu Nu let out a satisfied belch and patted her little belly. Today, she truly had not eaten much, for the flesh of the fire-eyed bull held too much nourishment. Even she could not bear it if she ate to excess. Ling Han, too, was stuffed to the brim. Though he possessed the strength of a martial artist at the first layer of Gushing Spring tier, in truth he was still of the Element Gathering tier. Thus, the meat of a level 3 demonic beast was likewise immensely nourishing to him. It was a pity he had not brought any spiritual herbs along. Otherwise, he could have brewed a pot of soup and let the various essences mingle together. That was what a truly nourishing meal should be. He sat down and began to refine and digest the food within, while Hu Nu began to scamper about. This was one of her own methods of absorbing nourishment. The other, naturally, was to sleep. After about 2 hours, Ling Han rose to his feet and smiled. There has been a slight strengthening of my muscles and blood vessels, and my cultivation has advanced quite quickly. Clearly, the more precious the item, the more it could fortify one's foundation. Those that merely raised cultivation alone could only be called scraps. If I eat fire-eyed bull meat every day and swallow some alchemical pills as well, I should be able to truly reach the peak of element gathering tier in about 10 days. Then I will break through to gushing spring tier and unravel the secrets of the Black Tower. After he dealt with the remaining portions of the fire-eyed bull, he stored everything into his spatial ring. The two of them then continued on their way toward the ring-shaped mountain. As they traveled, there were gradually more and more trees. There were even villages. Yet they had long since been abandoned, and there was not the slightest sign of life within them. There were even villas in those villages, once decorated with great luxury. Unfortunately, they were thoroughly ruined, for who knew how many people had come to plunder them over these few thousand years? So even if they had once been perfectly intact, they would have been dug up and turned upside down later on. It was said that the great clans of the 9 nations of the desolate north began to rise after they first ventured into the Devil's Sky mystery realm, and even managed to establish mighty nations, laying foundations that endured for a few thousand years. There were always those unwilling to give up, who still prowled through the villages to hunt. Who knew? Perhaps they might truly be fortunate and uncover a treasure that everyone else had somehow missed. There were also those with ill intent who lay in ambush within the village to rob those who had actually found something. As for Ling Han and Hu Nu, one adult and one child, they did not even carry baggage, appearing utterly poor. Thus, they did not encounter any ambushes at all. They advanced smoothly along the road, and after a few more days, they arrived at the foot of the ring-shaped mountain. Was this truly a mountain? Ling Han lifted his head to look up, doubt surfacing on his face. That was because the slope was far too steep. Rather than calling it a mountain, it looked more like a wall. But what kind of wall could tower a full 1,000 feet? Was this the handiwork of an almighty warrior of the shattering void tier? He sighed. He had never entered a mystery realm in the past. Otherwise, with his heaven tier cultivation, he would certainly be able to investigate the truth behind this place. Because directions were not easy to discern here, Ling Han and Hu Nu circled around the mountain. In any case, there were only 4 ravines, so at most they would only have to walk a quarter circle. 2 days later, they still had not reached the ravine. Instead, a small lake appeared before them, and Hu Nu immediately cried out that she wanted to bathe. Ling Han possessed a spatial ring, so he could stuff all his clothes, food, and necessities within, yet he could not possibly bring even bath water and a bathtub as well. That would take up far too much space. They had already been in the mystery realm for 5 days. Who knew used to be grimy and detested bathing, but after spending so many days around Lu Yu Tong and Li Si Chan, she had come to love it. Every day she would shamelessly wash herself clean. What more after 5 days without a bath? Let's first see whether it's safe, Ling Han said. He feared there might be some dangerous demonic beast within the lake, or perhaps even the lake itself was a great danger. With a splash, the lake waters parted, and a slender figure of astonishing beauty emerged. Ling Han hurriedly pressed Hu Nu down and sat, thinking he would probably get styes. He had actually, by accident, seen a woman bathing. He lowered his voice and said, "Nu, let's wait a while." Hu Nu did not understand, and her small mouth instantly pouted in displeasure. There were bushes all around the lake that provided excellent cover. With an adult and a child sitting low on the ground, there was no need to worry they would be discovered. However, after a while, there came a sha, 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 and the bushes rustled. A man actually appeared. That fellow's backside stuck out, and he lay half on his belly upon the ground. He kept staring toward the lake, crawling as he went, as if switching to different angles. As he peeped, he drooled and muttered, Indeed, one must change angles to admire a beauty to truly enjoy it. Ling Han took one look and could not help wearing a peculiar expression as he said, "Brother pervert, why have we met again?" The man was the self-proclaimed magnificent pervert, Gu Fenghua, caught red-handed. Gu Fenghua nearly sprang up in his hiding spot. He turned around and shot Ling Han a glance, and a puzzled look appeared on his face as he said, "How do you know I am a pervert? Could it be that my perversion is already as luminous as the sun and has reached the level where others can spot it with one glance? Brother pervert doesn't remember me anymore?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Gu Fenghua stared at Ling Han for a long while, then shook his head repeatedly and said, "You're not a beauty, so how could I possibly remember you? Yi, could it be that we share common interests?" His eyes lit up and he pointed toward the lake. "Brother pervert is speaking so loudly. Aren't you afraid you'll alert that young miss?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Gu Fenghua hurriedly covered his mouth and said, "You almost ruined my grand business. If that girl had discovered me, then wouldn't my efforts of tailing her all this while, and taking advantage of her moment of distraction to scatter a handful of itchy powder on her, forcing her to have no choice but to bathe, be completely wasted?" Ling Han's mouth twitched as he said, "I am deeply impressed by your determination, brother pervert. You truly are very perverted." Gu Fenghua looked exceedingly pleased with himself and could not restrain his laughter. Moreover, his laughter grew louder and louder, hearty beyond measure. Who? The girl bathing in the lake naturally heard such a commotion. Shua. A white figure flashed past, and she had already dived into the bushes. She stretched out a delicate hand and instantly snatched up the clothing she had hung there. After only a short while, a streak of sword chi shot over, and with the slash, shredded leaves flew everywhere. A young girl arrived in a leap. There were still droplets of water dripping from her hair, and her pretty face was filled with killing intent. Ling Han scooped up Hu Nu and leaped away together with Gu Fenghua, evading this strike. Evading this strike. Is it a slaughter every time you peek, brother pervert? Ling Han asked with a smile. Hey, don't wrong me. I am only a pervert, not a bad man. A thing like peeping naturally has nothing to do with me. Gu Fenghua said solemnly, waving his hands fiercely to shove away all blame. Yo, if you two big brothers like me, then just say it. Seeing as big brothers are so handsome, I might not be unwilling to have some fun with big brothers. So what need is there for you to peep at me so secretly? The girl's attack yielded no result, and she actually withdrew her murderous aura, her expression turning into a smile. She was not a virtuous girl.